Hello, everybody. Today we are talking about some myths about Russia and Russian people. So let's start. You've probably heard of facts about Russia that you assume to be true. Whenever I tell someone that I'm Russian, I usually get one of the statements listed below in response, which is irritating and sometimes even offensive. Don't make the same mistake. These myths about Russia are just that, myths, not more. Well, the first myth. It's always cold in Russia. Yes, Russia is one of the coldest countries in the world in the winter. However, a lot of regions in Russia also have incredibly warm summers and very mild fall and spring seasons. The second myth. Russia is dangerous. Russia is not any more dangerous than any other big country. Of course, every city has its bad neighborhoods, and if you are looking for trouble, you will always find it. However, if you abide by normal safety rules and don't do anything illegal, you won't be in any more danger than you would be in New York or Paris or London. There are also a lot of police in Russia, which can be a different problem, but also means that it's very safe on Russian streets. The second myth. Russians are drunks. Russians love alcohol in general and vodka especially, but most of them are not alcoholics. Russians drink a lot, but because of this, they have a very high alcohol tolerance. Yes, alcohol is present at almost every occasion in Russia, but this is a matter of custom and tradition, not alcoholism. So, the fourth myth. Russians hate Americans. Russians actually love American trends, media, music, and culture. They tend to get access to these things later than the rest of the Western world. The first Starbucks in Russia didn't appear until 2007, but they appreciate them even more. Starbucks, for example, is outrageously popular in Russia. The fifth myth. На здоровье. When raising a glass with a group of Russian people, do not say "na здоровье." This is not a toast. It's something Russian people say when somebody thanks them for a nice meal. But although Russian people make toasts with practically every sip of a drink, they usually say a unique toast every time. For example, to our friendship. Yes. If you want to make a toast in Russia, stick with "за вас," which means to you, and is very acceptable. The sixth myth. It's impossible, difficult, and very expensive to travel to Russia. Unfortunately, you do need an invitation and a visa to travel to Russia, but these are a lot easier to get than you may think. Hotel in Russia and travel agencies will send you an invitation for a small fee, and the visa process itself consists of a couple of simple visits to your nearest Russian embassy. That's all. The next myth. Russians are racist. Russian people are actually very open-minded. They may not be aware of the polite way to talk about people from other countries, but that doesn't mean that they have any malicious intent. In fact, they are usually curious about and happy to talk with visitors from other countries. The next myth, Russians are gloomy. If you take a look at Russian people on the streets, in the metro, or in the stores, you may well think that they never smile. The truth is, however, that Russians are warm, friendly, and extremely funny, just not in public. It's a norm in Russia to have one serious face on while in public places, and being too loud or showing too much emotion is considered strange and perhaps even impolite. The next myth, Russians are spies. This one doesn't really need elaboration because obviously all Russians are not spies. There are probably as many Russian Secret Service workers as there are American, French, or Canadian spies. This myth comes from the Cold War and from Hollywood movies, and bringing it up to Russian people is not funny. It only irritates them. The next myth. Russian women are attracted to older men. Some Americans and Westerns may find this odd that a Russian woman can easily marry a man 15, 20 years older than her. It's true and quite normal in Russia. Men are less in number as compared to women in Russia, so finding a right match is little difficult for Russian women. Families prefer settled people to marry their daughter. This may bring age gaps between bride and groom. One of the most interesting myths about Russia is bear walk the streets in Russia. What kind of sad things happen? You can really meet a bear in small towns of Siberia and the Far East. Animals appear on the outskirts to find food in garbage cans. Sometimes they even go out onto the highway, provoking accidents. But in other areas of Russia, for example, in such major cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kazan, or Sochi, the probability of meeting a bear on the street there is almost zero.
Кто ходит в гости по утрам, тот поступает мудро. Известно всем тарам-парам, на то оно и утро. На то оно и утро. А куда мы идем? К тебе, конечно.
And the last myth. Russians are the only natives of Russia. The Russian Federation, as the country is formally called, is a multinational state and more than 190 distinct people inhabit its territory. These people represent independent ethnic communities and carefully preserve their identities and traditions. Perhaps your next journey should be connected with destroying this myth. Have you heard anything about nomadic schools? Would you like to stay overnight in a charm tent in Siberia or take part in venison pickling? Even Russians often admit that there are far more unusual and exotic places to go to around their country than abroad. So, dear friends, we are going to sign off now. And I would like to tell you something. Please avoid in supporting that false image further and try to stop those who do. Let's stop all the fear and hatred already. There's been more than enough of this on the planet Earth. Goodbye.